I often just don't think people realize how fragile the whitetail resource really is. I think we have all taken it for granted because they've been so plentiful my whole life and most people's whole life for the most part.
Mhm.
And I just feel like, oh, no matter what we do as people, it'll still always be getting better. And
Yeah.
I know that's not a healthy outlook. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Whitetail Podcast. This one is a little bit different because we're recapping. A lot's happened in the past year, and there's a lot that happened in the world of content that we had tackled on, and then there's some interesting things that happened in the world of whitetails, and want to recap the season. There was a lot of people like, Jake, you haven't talked about your season at all. I was like, well, there's not a ton to talk about, but we'll get into all of that. We have Cameron here with us here today. Cameron, how's it going?
Good, man. It feels good to be here again. This is kind of how it started. This is kind
Yeah.
of how the relaunch started. It's fitting for this is to be how it's ending, but happy to be here. Happy to be having a better conversation than we had at this time last year. So, yeah, everything's good.
A lot can happen in a year, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
definitely good to be talking about fun and exciting things. Are you ready to just rip right into this? Because I want to recap some of this past year. We had some incredible. I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I feel like we had probably one of our best year of podcasting, one of our best years of Whitetail Cribs, and I get everyone doesn't listen to every single episode. So if we talk about one of these, it might be worth going back to listen because we produced over, I don't know, probably. Yeah, I guess we got a late start, but I'm going to call it 52 podcasts and a bunch of different videos. But you edit the video version of the podcast, so you know all these as well. What
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
your favorite? I have a handful that I really enjoyed, but do you have any opening thoughts? And then I'll open it up to what was maybe one of your one or two favorite podcasts of the year.
Yeah. So, editing a deer hunting podcast for so long. I mean, for years until Lucas took it over, but I still had some insight on it. And it kind of got to a point where it was like, you've kind of heard it. And the ones that were the most refreshing and exciting were always a different guest or someone that hasn't been through the cycle. And to be frank, I mean, it could be someone saying the same thing that other people have already said, but it's a fresh voice and they may deliver it in a different way that they're exciting. But actually, one of my favorite episodes this year was Bobby Warner.
Yeah. That was a great one.
And that
Yeah,
was a land podcast, like, re-up,
yeah.
but just in terms of, like, just nuggets and information and perspective, that was just one of my favorite listens, one of my favorite edits, and the Clinton Lake experiment was probably number 2.
Yeah. Bobby Warner's episode was really interesting and awesome. We're gonna. He doesn't know this, so if he's listening to it, I'm gonna reach out to Bobby and we're gonna have to do some more podcasts this year because I really enjoyed speaking with him and really interesting perspective. And I actually had lunch with Ron Wilmore last week. He doesn't live terribly far from me, and it was just fun just to go visit with him and just talk deer hunting and talk about everything else. But that episode for me was probably one of my favorites we've ever done. Just a completely different foreign idea. And basically, for folks that didn't listen, he was tasked to managing a piece of ground for the state, and it was one of the best positive whitetail experience that ever happened. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it was something ridiculous to where like the far majority of the bucks were Pope and Young. One of the most iconic free ranging deer was on this piece of ground too. And his management practices on a small scale makes you wonder what would happen if someone like him had some decision making on a statewide level, because it was a balanced herd in the sense of for a long time you had to shoot a doe in order to get a buck and all the different things they try to target mature deer, and just truly phenomenal when you really think about what he was able to do in a short amount of time. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I was trying to think of that stat, and it was something like 70% or
That's what I
something, like
thought, but I
some
didn't want to say it because it
crazy
seems so
number.
high. Yeah.
Yeah. It
It,
was
it,
over Pope and Young shot at that place, and there was, like, the most famous people ever going to hunt that farm.
a piece of public,
Yeah, yeah.
which
It
is
was amazing.
yeah. So that's for sure was interesting. Another one that I really enjoyed the whole day was with Bobby Worthington when we sat down, and um, I really enjoyed his book too. For anyone that hasn't read it, I encourage folks to read it. Like page turner, honestly. Like some things
Mhm.
that really make you think about different perspectives. And uh, that conversation was in the back of my mind a lot of the times where I'm like trying to pick a tree and I'm looking around. And I was like, all right, if you can set up on one trail, try to set up on two, and like all those different, little things that he said was in the back of my mind throughout the year. And then another one that got a lot of traction online was Skip talking about regulations, which
Mhm.
I think it shows that a lot of people are ready for some form of change or recognize that, maybe as a whole things aren't going in the right direction. And then a lot of those comments were just like on the other end of the spectrum. And then it really shows how we're all hunters, but our goals seem to vary pretty drastically. And you and I have
Yeah.
talked about that.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that in regard to like the sub sectors of the whitetail community like you have, and like go ahead and explain it.
Dude, it's crazy. I mean, there's I get my head goes in so many different directions, but I think I always go when I think about like we're all hunters and we all want the same thing. I would always go back to like some content around cell cameras and the amount of people that were actually for banning cell cameras to me was always super shocking. And it always made me kind of look back at like, so maybe like maybe we're the minority, or maybe we look at things at a way different perspective. And okay, we worked for a cell camera company, like now we don't anymore, right? We're just hunters again. And I go back to that, I'm like, if they banned cell cameras, I'd still be pissed. I'd still feel the same way. And it just made me realize like some of the goals and stuff that we align with are just not really in tune with the far majority of people that are going hunting. Now, what's more shocking is that they're not necessarily aligned with the people that are consuming the content. Like you would think if someone is listening to this podcast or listening to deer hunting podcasts or watching it on YouTube, it's like you're probably watching it to figure out how to kill a bigger deer next year.
Hmm.
And that's not the goal for a lot of people.
I, I would agree with that. The challenge I have with that is like the people that want to see states improve are the ones that spend the most time, energy,
Mhm.
resources to try to go towards that. And then when the state doesn't necessarily view that as the same way, I think that's where just a lot of frustration could get created pretty easily. And I think that's probably the
Yeah.
case for a lot of folks. And we always would joke like, all right, it's after deer season, it's regulation podcast season, because
Yeah.
it's like, it's like when people want to fire their coach, burn the city, we need a new team. And that's unfortunately something that resonates with a lot of people, which is concerning.
Yeah, I think this year is gonna be an interesting year for that. Just coming from the Ohio perspective with what we've dealt with EHD, we made some changes on the fly in season to help mitigate some of that, but I'm curious to see how that is gonna transpire. I've been, like, religiously keeping track of data to showcase like harvest numbers this year compared to last year with the EHD outbreak. I can't imagine being in a state like Iowa that's dealt with an EHD breakout seems like every other year.
Hmm.
And you could see that the negative impact that's happening on Iowa when we were sitting in the Iowa Bow Hunters Association dinner that night and they showed the map of Iowa with like declining deer numbers. The whole state was red.
Hmm.
So I think this year with more EHD outbreaks throughout the country, people are going to want answers, or people are going to want to see some progress. So I'm curious. I think there's going to be some more fired up people in this time of year.
Yeah. So you're in Iowa, or excuse me, you're in Ohio, and obviously you weren't in an area that got completely decimated by EHD. But I know you talked to a lot of folks that hunt, throughout the state. What's been the overall consensus or temperature on Ohio season? It seems like less giants have came out of Ohio this year than years previously. That's just Facebook observation.
So I had that same thought. So I just went to like Ohio Big Buck forums, or Toby Hughes is a good gauge on that because he's scoring a bunch of deer. He's had significantly way less posts this year than last year. It seemed like there was a 200 getting killed every week last year.
Yeah.
And this year they're not really popping up, but um I think I was still surprised to see how many big deer came out of Southern Ohio. Because the way people were talking about EHD when it was happening was like, there's no deer left. There were people saying that in some of those counties, like it killed 80% of the deer. It's like that seems bananas. But if you look at the harvest data, those counties are literally at an 80% decrease on total harvest year over year. Now add back in EHD numbers, and you're like pretty much on par
Hmm.
um, with the harvest that area could sustain. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes forward. But as a state, as a whole, we've killed 650 less bucks this year than last year,
Okay.
and I think 1,300 less deer this year than last year. But it was like a 1%, less than 1% decline in harvest numbers, but then you add in 8,000 EHD reported EHD kills, and we're on the upward trend by a lot. And I was really curious to see like what counties that was impacting. And there's counties that are like, I think there's 9 counties, 9 or 10 counties that killed 250 more bucks or higher. Ashtabula County being one that, as of December 17th, killed 509 more bucks this year than they did last year.
Do you attribute that to potentially non-residents like, all right, well, I'm not going to Southern Ohio. I need to go to a different part?
I think that has something to do with it, but the Ashtabula County one, maybe not. Um, I think weather too. I think the weather for this season in general was way better than it has been in years past. There's hasn't been this much snow on the ground throughout December, like for a really long time. But Ashtabula County is one of the furthest northeast counties. There's not a lot of public opportunity in Ashtabula County. So I don't think it would be like a bunch of people from the south saying, I'm going to go way up there. But
Hmm.
there are counties that are just above those EHD counties that their numbers are 20% up, 30% up. I think there's 10 counties total that saw a 30% increase or more in buck harvest. So, what's that do to them a few years down the road?
Yeah. I often just don't think people realize how fragile the whitetail resource really is. I think we have all taken it for granted because they've been so plentiful my whole life and most people's whole life for the most part.
Mhm.
And I just feel like, oh, no matter what we do as people, it'll still always be getting better. And
Yeah.
I know that's not a healthy outlook. Like that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
If you could say, Ohio, this is what we need to do for next year. Is it just a major reduction of tags in those impacted areas? Or like,
They did that already. They made those counties a 1 deer county compared to a 3 deer county. So they
mhm.
cut it in a third, but you almost have to limit it to buck only, like no doe harvests. Um, but I think as a whole, the statewide tag number has to be declined, and I would love to see it become a draw.
Yeah.
Um,
I think everyone, even non-residents would love to see that happen.
well, that's the thing with the where you go back to the goal.
Right.
The
All
majority of
serious
people,
whitetail hunters. Yeah.
yeah, like the majority of the people actually don't want to see that.
Uh-huh.
Ohio took a they raised their price on the tag this year mid-season. Like if you bought your tag before September 1 and after September 1, there was like a $200 increase in the tag cost or something. I'm not a non-resident, so I don't know what it was before, but I think it was like around 250 bucks to $400. And there were people that I know that were like, I'm not buying a tag now because it's 400 bucks.
Mhm.
Trey, for
Mhm.
instance, he was like, I'm paying for a lease in Ohio. It's in an EHD county. I don't necessarily have a deer that I want to kill. So I'm paying for this lease. I didn't buy my license and I'm not buying my license now.
Mhm.
So it did deter people from purchasing a license, which probably helped, which is good. Now that person doesn't have a $400 tag in their pocket and say, I'm killing whatever because I paid 400 bucks. But it's like anytime you see Ohio needs to become a draw, Ohio needs to become a draw, the comment section is crazy. And there's people that are like very, very against that. And the Ohio DNR, I think, is paying attention to that because it's
Mhm.
very much an opportunist. Um, it's an opportunistic outlook for them. They want everyone to have opportunity.
Yeah. Would you, because I I feel like there's probably a lot of non-residents that own ground in different sections of Ohio. Would you like to see it more of a Kansas model or Iowa model? So Kansas being, you own 80 acres, you get a tag every year as part of being a landowner. Iowa doesn't matter if you own 10,000 acres, you don't get a tag.
I think the Kansas model in Ohio is a slippery slope, with what it does to land prices. Um, I think the Iowa model's proven and hard to
Yeah.
beat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are all topics of conversation to keep an eye on. And we'll have to see if Mike Rex will hop on here and go over some of your stats. I told you I'd give you the keys to the podcast for that episode since you are way more in tune with that than myself. But I think that would be a pretty interesting conversation across the board. And I credit Ohio for being pretty proactive of making those changes mid-season too. Like I definitely you have to tip your cap to them for doing so.
Yeah, they
Um,
tried something.
yeah, I mean, you probably have to, unfortunately. Yeah, I think so each one of these little mini segments we're going to be doing here, I'm opening it up to a question of who and what do you want to hear in 2026 on the Whitetail Podcast. Um, I have a variety of different ideas I want to try to implement this upcoming year. Is there anyone, Cameron, that you'd like to see on the podcast in 26, or any ideas that jump right off to you?
Yeah, you put me on the spot there.
I know.
Um, I gotta think about it. We've talked about this internally with like, are we gonna do the gamut again of the most recognized names, or do you try to go off the beaten path a little bit? And when you look at people that we haven't hit, I enjoyed the Lee Lakosky episode a lot, and it seemed like Lee enjoyed the episode a lot. And I've caught some Mark Jury episodes with Working Class.
Hmm.
I think I'd like to hear Mark.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Mark Jury would be on the short list of folks for me that I'd like to hear from. He's gone through so much in terms of like where he started to where deer hunting is now. And I don't know that I want to hear about his tactics, but I almost just want to hear about like the changes that he's overcome or things that he's changed his mind on or things of that nature. But I think he's on my short list.
I like that. That's a great one. Well, let's roll into Whitetail Cribs, the rebirth of Whitetail Cribs. Um, God bless your soul. When Whitetail Cribs was running around, you were running around because we had new episodes every single week, and between you and Lucas, you guys had a lot of travel time and went to a lot of different places. And this sounds really bad, but sometimes you're like, they were on Whitetail Cribs, and I was like, dude, I can't remember. Well, I mean, there's like over 200 of them. I was like, I can't remember all of them. And so this year we refined that list down, and we did 8 episodes, and they're all. I was all really happy with them. I mean, a couple of them were out of the world, like talking about Lee and Tiffany or the Lakosky podcast. Their house was incredible, and it was such an awesome experience. And just like the amount of not just big deer, giant deer was hard to fully comprehend what you were looking at because it's like a sea of 170s and 80s and everything else. And then I told Lee, and I was like, man, I'm gonna feel like a real loser when I go home and look at my office. I guess it's like the most extreme thing on the face of the earth, and then you go back to like reality for most people. And that episode was really Lucas crushed that episode, I think.
Dude, when well, first it bummed me out a bunch to like not have any inclusion in cribs this year. It's like some of the best episodes ever. So that bummed me out a little bit. But watching them when they came together, man, that that Lee episode is like what we all envisioned cribs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like from the initial time at Scott Buckley's house, first episode ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's what we were shooting for. Lucas did an outstanding job. It's cool to have Richard there to be the second camera on that. I mean, what a what a cherry popper that is. But yeah, that this season of Cribs is like it was out of this world. And Lee Lakosky, Lee and Tiffany was definitely my favorite episode by far.
Yeah, it was crazy. And that's where we did that first trip in the summer, like in the South with Spook, Bobby Worthington, Michael Perry, and Jimmy McKay. And whereas I was like, we got to step up our game even more because this is what we do now. Like this isn't like an add-on to a product company, right? Like this is what it is. And so, I challenged Lucas. Was like, okay, we gotta step up our game here. And I think moving forward, we'll have to do 2 shooters on all these episodes because I think it just created a much more polished uh, product for sure. And it's just the one thing that you've experienced, like just seeing the amount of passion that these folks have. Like I think sometimes people look at those like, oh yeah, they just wanted to brag about themselves for an hour. It's like I have never once honestly gotten that impression personally. These people are just that ate up about it. They've literally designed their entire lives around it, and they're just appreciative that someone else wants to listen to the craziness that they've lived and like what they've done. And it's like, I don't know. I enjoy the heck out of going to those because it's just you're surrounded by people that have similar, passions and goals, and like all these people design their lives in some form or fashion to pursue whatever they're after. And
Mhm.
so, I'm sure you have some mutual feelings of agreement there with all that. Like just the
Yeah.
passion is unreal.
Yeah, that's kinda what this whole format is built off of. It's not a pound your chest, look at me. I'm sure there's people that we could put on there that would feel that way, but,
Hmm.
that's not the experience that I've had with any of them. I mean, I always think of, like, some of the first episodes, like Doug Clark. I
Yeah.
mean, those are things that are gonna live like, he can go at any time and look back on that and say, like, "Look where I was and look where I'm now." Or Michael Hunsucker, after we did it, he sold his house. So now he has, like, a video tour of, like, the way that once was. I'm sure it brings back a bunch of memories if he ever goes back and look at it. But, there's gonna be a point where some of these people move on and, like, this is their legacy in video form
Hmm.
in one compilation.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's my favorite thing is when you ask someone like about a random deer and they're like, oh
Oh,
man, and you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And they're like, it's fun to see them relive through that excitement and memory because they probably hadn't told that story in so long. Cause you go to someone's house, they go, oh wow, that's amazing. And like that's the end of the conversation typically
yeah,
versus
yeah.
like getting a chance to tell every story. But we have a few people penciled in for 26, and I would love to see people leave comments on who they would like to see in 26. It's going to be a tough year to top. I will be the first person to say it's going to be a tough year to top. I think we can do it. I really do. But if anyone has any specific guest in mind, I would love to hear it so we could do our very best to do so.
Yeah, I'm prepared for this one if you wanna put me on the spot
Who do you want
this
to
time.
see? Who do you want to see?
I wanna see Levi Morgan.
Yeah, that'd be a
Yeah,
great one.
that's an episode that I think would be Lee Lakosky-esque.
Hmm.
I'd love to see him. And, hey, while we're at it, if we're recording with Mark, we might as well do,
Yeah.
cribs with him. So that'd be cool. But some of the other ones that have kind of loosely already agreed to this year are gonna be absolute bangers. So,
Hmm.
there's a lot to look forward to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the challenge. I think back on like the progression of our YouTube channel, right? Like how much it's evolved over the years. And it's just like, you know, uh it's just interesting to see like that bar just get reset constantly, 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 constantly. And that's the fun and exciting part of it. But I would welcome any suggestions from anyone
Skip,
for
skip, skip. Let's get a chant. Skip, skip.
maybe he'll
Now,
do it.
there did he kill a big deer this year?
I don't think he's killed a deer yet. Actually, I
So
don't know that for a fact.
this could be the year because he's not gonna be like, well, I need one back from my taxidermist.
That is the first cop out of Whitetail Cribs. Uh, every single yeah. Well, even some of the guests this year, they're like, "Well, I'm still waiting on some to get back," and it's like,
You always will be.
yeah, and it'll get lost in the sea of the 80 other
Yeah.
animals on your wall. But yeah, well, and the other thing I just want to say is like I appreciate all the support from the content and the cribs too. Like it was best year in terms of viewership on cribs, and obviously that means that people enjoyed it. So I really appreciate that. Let's get into the world of whitetails in 2025. I feel like every year there's a couple defining stories that kind of stick to the community, and the first one was the general, the giant sheds. got purchased for 7 figures is what's been published. So $1 million. And what's fascinating, I was watching a clip with Josh Duncan. It was on Outdoor Life, and I never knew this, but the guy that found it, he was a World War II veteran, I believe, and he was just driving looking for a lost cow, and
Wow.
that's how he found those sheds in 1959. And so and I want to say they were a year old at that time. I could be wrong, but and I'd have to double check that. I should have paid more attention before I go saying this because someone's like, no, they're not. So, but I know for sure they were found in 1959 and sold for over 7 figures. And then the craziest part of that story is after they surfaced, and magically an old picture surfaced where that deer had stickers and they got shaved off. Crazy, like
Yeah.
so crazy.
What is so just put it's hard to put into like words what that does to that deer, but what does shaving those stickers off do to the general? Why did they do it is what I'm saying.
Oh, I think so. It netted a little bit higher was the reason it got
Yeah.
shaved.
So it
And
becomes
a higher
just a
net.
clean typical.
Yeah, but the fact that I'll just say this: if I was to do this, spend $1 million on antlers, and then found out that they were altered afterwards, could you
Oh
talk
my
about a
god.
sleepless night or two of like what?
Oh my
What?
god.
But I feel like they've been able to. It almost creates another layer of like a mystique to the
Mhm.
antlers, like an untold story of one of the most iconic sheds, or the biggest set of typical sheds ever found ever. Biggest One of the
Yeah.
biggest typicals to ever walk the face of the earth. It's
I
just
think
crazy.
when you had the conversation with Jamie Martin right after that happened, the question was posed like, does this change the value of these antlers? And the way the story has been told and the way they've done a really good job of like keeping it going, it almost feels like they're worth more.
I would agree with that. Which I'm gonna put on a tin cap for a second. How much other whitetail history or iconic
Oh yeah.
whitetail, like how much is has been mistold or misrepresented over the years that we all just take as fact now? And
Yeah.
I feel like that gets harder, like as iPhones and like, but let's say like pre 1990, how what skeletons are in the closet in the world of whitetail history? Because it begs the question. Like obviously,
It does. Yeah. It's hard to I mean, what was the deer that got stolen in Iowa?
yeah. Um,
Uh,
I Andrews, I think was his last name.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Like the fact that that deer has never surfaced
yeah,
and it comes out that this deer was his points were shaved from 1959. It's like, how do these things still happen? And then it makes you wonder how many things, like you said, are taken as fact that we have no clue about. It
yeah.
always brings back the Mitchum Paula fire.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I feel like that. I feel like the steam rolls off that, but then it always picks up somehow every single year. But yeah, absolutely. Like that's a somewhat of an unsolved mystery, I guess. People have very strong opinions, I guess, both
Very strong.
ways. But that deer that got stolen, amongst all the other ones that got stolen, it's like where the hell are those, and who has that? Like, there's someone has them, right? Someone has them. Who and why?
You gotta think that they didn't just steal them to chop them up and make them into antler chews for dogs. Like
Correct.
they gotta be intact.
They got sold for sure
Yeah,
at some point.
it's amazing.
Well, in 50 years, we'll know the story, and uh,
Hopefully,
maybe it will make sense. But it certainly just begs the question: like, where are they at today? And then
yeah,
how many other ones are out there that we have no clue of? But yeah, that was a pretty crazy deal. And then the other interesting thing too, after the general was bought, I believe it might have been at the Iowa Deer Classic. I could 100% be wrong, but a set of sheds from the general later on, and they were like trying to match him up, and they actually did DNA testing, and it came back confirmed that was so. There was 3 sets of sheds off the general, and you could see like his progression of antler and like how it went down. And I saw that on their Facebook page, and it was $88. Everyone's like, well, how much did that cost? And it's like $88. I was like, dude, that's compared to $1 million. That was money well spent.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be curious to see like what. Obviously, that was they bought it. They're doing an awesome job of telling the story and history of that deer, of what more story do they have, like what more to the story do they have to share, or what they have coming down the pipeline. And I think that's a really cool thing that they're able to kind of piece together that history, because most people, I don't think really even probably really knew about the general as a whole. Like if you
Mhm.
went to a deer classic and like, have you heard of the general 5 years ago or 4 years ago? Maybe it was 15, 20%, 25% of people. And now I'm sure that number's gone up drastically, since it has since resurfaced. So I think that's a cool part about what they're doing too.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Josh more. Who is he? Why preserve this? Like, what made you want to purchase those antlers for that figure, and preserve that history? Like, who are you? What are your goals with it? So I think it's cool. I think it's great for the general. I think it's great for deer. That happened, but I'm curious to see what comes out of it.
If you've been struggling this season and you feel like your farm isn't quite set up how it needs to be, I want to tell you about the Whitetail Master Academy. This has over 40 land designs from Don Higgins, and there is exclusive discounts for anyone that is a member, so you can sign up, join our hundreds of videos of in-depth conversation, whether it's about CRP, equip, understanding logging, understanding how to set up a farm. This is the most comprehensive place to get the best information when it comes to serious whitetail hunting. And if you want to sign up, you can use code WHTL, and we're going to give you a free 1 year of Onyx subscription while supplies last. So use the code WHTL at sign up. This is a great way to support the podcast. I own this business, and it would mean the world to me. And there is a lot of really good information that can help you right now or help you objectively look at your farm to start improving it for next year. I'm going to call him as soon as we get done with this podcast. So hopefully I'll have more information for everyone. Next big piece of news, and this is probably recency bias here, but Kuyu got bought.
Mhm.
I've always admired Kuyu from afar on what they were able to do, and how they were able to continue forward after kind of the tragic loss of their founder. And it seems like the industry does not like when companies get bought. Doesn't matter
No.
but it doesn't matter by who it is. But what was your first thought when you saw Kuyu got bought in
Um,
general?
well, when the headlines are like Kuyu gets bought by a billionaire, I'm thinking Jimmy John. Like instantly, I was like, "Oh, Jimmy John bought Kuyu." But I think I didn't think much of it. Right? It was like, okay, uh, private equity maybe bought Kuyu, or I didn't look into who it was, and like, it's not really not going to have that much of an impact on me. But then you start reading the headlines, right, and dig into it a little bit more, and you're like, "Oh man, that could go south, or that could have the wrong perspective." But the people who sold Kuyu, you have to imagine wouldn't sell it to someone that would just like they're like, "Oh, this is gonna suck. This isn't gonna be good." And you read more into the headlines of the the way the laws are written in Montana, and the I guess the lawsuits that he who bought it has been a part of. It on a headline, like a surface level headline, it's not a good look.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. I've told you this. I see a lot more people wearing Kuyu in the whitetail world than what I did 3 or 4 years ago.
They've done a great job, and Chad was always like pulling that string. They're like, he's like, I'm telling you, Kuyu, you're seeing more Kuyu. We used to look at Harrisburg and like the Sitka First Light. There was like a year where First Light, everyone was wearing First Light, and
Yeah.
then Joe Miles pops on the scene with the Osseo. And it's like everyone's wearing Osseo, and Kuyu has climbed the ranks
Yeah.
like in the shadows, and then all of a sudden it was like everyone's wearing some type of Kuyu. I bought it. I bought some pieces. Like they made a very strong effort to tackle the whitetail hunter, and they did a really good job of it.
Yeah. I would agree with that, and I maybe that's part of this investment. For them to have the ability to tackle more of the whitetail market. But what I had read in the press release was actually one of the. Let me jump around here a little bit. So the headline about the owner of Cox Enterprise basically potentially denying, like basically being uh, not in favor of public
Public
access and
access.
things of that nature. I found a thread on Instagram, and I thought I had copy and pasted this guy's username. But this is a segment here. Billionaire who attempted to limit public access to public land now owns Kuyu. That billionaire is tied to very public fight in Montana where people legally floating and accessing navigable public waters were challenged because those waters ran past his property. Under Montana law, the public has the right to use those waters, but lawsuits and pressure were used in an attempt to push people out anyway. That alone should matter to hunters, anglers, and anyone who believes conservation means access, not exclusion. What made this blow up nationally is what happened next. A longtime writer connected to Ducks Unlimited wrote critically about the situation, questioning why a so-called conservationist was trying to stop the public from using public waters, and was promptly fired after the article ran. That sent a clear message to a lot of people in the hunting world criticizing powerful conservation money, and your voice can disappear. So now that this time billionaire conservation money owns a major hunting brand, it's fair to ask the uncomfortable question: is it a really good idea for a quote unquote conservationist who uses his money to kick people off public land to own a hunting brand as big as Kuyu? And I had read somewhere else, I didn't screenshot it, it might have been last week, but I think what happened was they had bought a farm or bought a property to where the previous owner, even though it was private access, this allowed folks to drop into the river there. And so he bought that farm, was like, hey, sorry, you can't use this anymore. This is private ground. So that's the other side of the story. And I want to say he donated like $325 million to conservation. So my opinion is it's probably don't have the full story on both sides of this, is the reality of it. And I mean, I guess same here. Like, I don't think it really impacts me at all, but I think it's a question that's on top of, on top of a lot of people's minds. And so the investment, I was like, so what are they going to do next? Right. And so I guess it's funny. They were a consumer direct brand, right? And now they have a couple flagship stores. I think they have 5. That's actually one of their biggest initiatives, is actually to open up more flagship stores, which I find kind of interesting. I think a lot of them are in Texas. There's one in Maryland. And then the Cox Enterprise actually started a different division. Kuyu, I believe, is the first holding within that. It's Cox Outdoors. And so they're apparently pretty bullish in the world of outdoor activities. And what's interesting is, so there's a bunch, they have Cox Farms, then they have, if you ever, like at the grocery store, they own one of the, like, if you buy like little colorful peppers in a bag,
Oh, yeah.
they own that company too. They own 2 of those different companies, or you buy spinach or something like that. That's another part of their division. So pretty interesting. They've invested $2 billion in clean tech business and technologies. So the craziest part is just like Kuyu's probably one of the smaller holdings within their ginormous conglomerate, which is, I think, maybe hard. Like in our world, like Kuyu's huge, right? Like some of these businesses seem huge, and then like in the grander scope of the world, it's nothing.
Yeah. I think that was a classic. It was just a classic misinterpretation of the headline, and the headline got out, and like just from that alone, it was like a bad look. I saw a bunch of people like, I'm selling all my Kuyu, and I looked at the prices. I was like, I'll scoop it up. I don't think I think it's a net positive for us consumers. Like you said, he had already donated a lot more money to conservation than that situation. And I did read a little bit on that too, where it was like not really public access. It was just allowed by the previous owner. And he was like, well, not anymore. Hey, I kick people off of my land that used to be able to hunt it. Like, you gonna stop listening to us now?
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like, it's we all want people to be able to hunt and people to be able to access public land that's public, but I don't blame the guy personally.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll do some sort of longer form piece of content.
He almost has to now.
I would agree, unless they just think it'll go away, which it likely will. People will forget, more than likely. Because I mean, that's happened with other brands that get bought, and it's, the world's on fire, and then it's like, still pretty good.
They make a good product though.
So
I wish we would have met them a year ago.
Yeah, for sure. We're a clean tech company. So those are kind of the bigger stories that did you see that one deer that I think it was shot in North Dakota? Just a massive looking deer. Was it North Dakota or South Dakota? Did you remember seeing that?
I saw a lot. I saw a lot of big deer this year.
You would remember this deer. I can't remember the guy's name. It was a super, super heavy, crazy giant deer. And then obviously there was that 270 that got shot in Iowa this year as well.
Mhm.
That was another giant deer. Um, I would say those are probably the two deer that jumped to top of mind for me. Every year, it seems like there's usually one that like really catches a lot of steam and a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Those two are the ones that jump out to me. Is there any other deer that you've seen that I'm missing that you can think of?
Just recently in like some Ohio forums, there's a deer floating around that's just an absolute mega giant that people are literally like, anyone have more information on this deer? Anyone have any more information on this deer? That I think could be one that is on the topic of the headlines a lot. Um, but there was a deer in Ashtabula County that the county I talked about that killed 500 more bucks this year. It's like 208,
Mm,
giant deer. But there wasn't like the huff buck or
that's
the
what I'm
CJ
saying. Yeah,
Alexander buck or who was the other man? We've interviewed way too many people that kill big deer, but who was the kid in Ashland that killed the giant typical that we
Thomas comes to mind.
yeah. Yeah, like that. There was like how many Ohio last year that were like could have been the record. This year that doesn't seem to be the case, but it doesn't seem to be the case really in any state.
I also wonder how I feel like a lot of these deer, like even any quote unquote upper echelon deer, easiest way to describe it. I think a lot of those are just not finding the internet as much as they
Yeah,
used
that
to as well.
that 208 that I talked about in Ashtabula is like it's hard to get any information on that.
Yeah,
I never saw it online.
I think a lot of hunters are feeling the need not to post it, and I don't blame them at all
Yeah.
whatsoever. And so I think that might be part of the product too. Well, any other news here? Otherwise, we'll kind of recap any lessons learned from this year's deer season.
No, I think that's it on the face of news in the whitetail world. It's kind of quiet. I mean, some big things happened, but kind of quiet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So you had as normal, you had a great year, North Dakota and Ohio. Um, on the North Dakota buck, we talked about that on Rough Fresh. But if you want to give like you can talk about however much you want to, and then you listen to the Deer Society episodes that we did, and that came together in Ohio. So I'll let you take
Yeah,
from there.
yeah. The North Dakota deer was a classic early season velvet hunt. Used the glass a lot, a way that I like to hunt. Made a plan, watched a deer do a certain thing multiple times in a row, and decided to execute on that. It was the like ground and pound hunt that I like. Killed him at 11 yards on the ground, and he was actually above me when I shot. It's pretty cool. Um, that was just a he was just a nice deer, not necessarily what I went out there for, but Pope and Young caliber 8 pointer with a split G2. He was a cool deer. But messed up on a much larger deer out there and learned a lot for next year. So excited to go back there. But that started the season off on a successful hunt. I just talked to Clint Campbell on a podcast with for to talk about the buck I shot in Ohio, and it was kind of he asked me what my expectations were going into the year, and I had really, really low expectations in Ohio, and had nothing to do with the EHD. It was just the private access that I had access to. I didn't think there was going to be a deer that I was like really amped up to shoot. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go pound in public because everyone else is being displaced. So I just had pretty low expectations. I didn't draw a Kansas tag. I didn't have like a November hunt. So it was like October 20th or October 17th. I was like, well, Scrape Week's getting ready to ramp up. I'm going to go back to some properties and just hang cameras on scrapes and try to find some inventory for like late fall inventory. Um, October 20th, I got the first picture of this deer in daylight. First ever picture that I've ever known of this deer was at 8 a.m. on a scrape on October 20th. And I was like, whoa.
Scrape week.
Yeah. I mean, just so I wish I would have known about him prior because like felt like I could have executed on that. But um I made one hunt after him a couple days later because he was there at 8 a.m. and then I think 2 days later it was like 6:53. And then like one day later, it was like 6:40. Like he was just on the edge of light. We were getting a little bit of a cold front. I think it was October 24th or something. Um, I went in after him, and I'm pretty sure I boogered him. A deer came in after or right before shooting light, um, a way that I did not expect him to approach, and just heard like the steps coming in, like real quiet with a purpose, and then never heard steps again. And I was like, I feel like he just snuck out with me without me ever knowing. He never blew, never ran. Something a mature deer would do, right? Kind of come and go, and you never even know it. But uh, I never got another picture of him on that scrape. So I had 4 or 5 pictures of him on that scrape, and then after I hunted him, I never got another one. But I had more cameras in that area, and I was getting them like 400 yards north, and I was like, he's just kind of staying up there now. So Halloween, the day before, it rained all day. So I had really good access the next day. Leaves are quiet, winds were high. Got in a stand at like 7:50, like way late, way after light. But I was my first time in, and I wanted to be able to see. Um, so I got up in the stand, made a bunch of noise getting up there, so I rattled.
Hmm.
And I was telling Clint, it all happens kind of so fast that I forget the sequence of events, but it kind of came back to me. I rattled, and I rattled because I was like trying to cover my noise. I wasn't rattling like thinking that someone was going to come in. I've never rattled in a deer in Ohio ever. It's like I just did that to think like, okay, I'm going to cover my noise, and then I'm going to hunt. So I rattle, I put the antlers up, and I pull my phone out, and I'm like Snapchatting my setup, and I'm doing a pan, and I get to over my right shoulder, and he's coming. I'm like, oh my god! I hurried up and put my phone away, and long story short, he caught me moving. Of course, came in downwind, and he took 2 bounds and put himself behind a really big tree and kind of stopped and was looking around. And I think he was gonna still try to get around to where he heard that rattling, and he took a couple steps out from behind that tree, and I was already at full draw and shot him. But um, that was kind of a wild, hectic morning, and end up being the deer that I was in there for, and my biggest bow buck. So that was pretty awesome,
That's
and the
super cool.
earliest I've ever killed.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's super cool.
yeah.
The I yeah, I mean that's cool to hear that that worked because I like when we were doing all the like inadvertently we did a lot of calling
Hmm.
podcasts this fall, and some people were giving me heck about it, and
Really?
yeah, it's like I've never that's a scam that's never worked or like and truthfully like I've had good luck calling a deer. I personally have not had I haven't tried much. I didn't rattle at a single deer all year this year, so that's probably part of the equation. But I was glad to hear when you said you shot one and you rattled. Then I was like, hell yeah, it does work, and we're not putting out misinformation because that's what I was like. That was kind of the consensus on some of the feedback I was getting, which is kind of funny.
Well, there was just a lot of people in my circle that were like rattled one in today. Deer responding to rattling right now. Like if you're gonna rattle, now's the time. And in the back of my head, I was like, well, we'll give her a shot. It's never worked for me either. But I listened to some podcasts about calling, and maybe my calling got better, and it worked this time
Yeah,
because I sounded more like a deer. So
that was the
yeah,
key
it
thing.
worked.
Sound
It
like a
worked.
deer. Sound
Right.
like a
I
deer, and work levels up.
honestly typically I would get in there and just like go at it, just start rattling. This time I tickle the antlers a little bit, stop, tickle them a little bit, stop. And like I didn't just go ham and then grunt in between, like just made it sound more realistic, and yeah, rattled in a 160. So it works.
Love it, love it. Yeah. Was there any key things that you're keeping in mind for 26 in regard to how this season went?
Yeah. I'll draw Iowa next year. So that's like the key focus. But I hunted less this year than ever. And probably because I tagged out in Halloween. But to that point, I mean, excluding North Dakota, like just hunts in Ohio, I hunted 4 times, but they were very calculated. A lot of them were off prior information, and that helped really work things out. And I talked to you a little bit loosely. I suck at hunting the rut. I'm like not a very good rut hunter. I've killed deer in early season, but like in Ohio, November 19th, November 21st, November 22nd, December 5th, December 20th. I don't have like any success in early November. So I made it a point to be more intentional with how I'm hunting the rut. Even the deer I killed in Iowa a couple years ago was November 16th. Like
Mm.
early November, I struggle. So I'm gonna take that same approach to what I learned this year and put that in Iowa and hopefully be able to have some more success early in the rut.
Are you still going to go out in October? Or are you going to force yourself to hunt the rut in Iowa?
Well, from cameras this year, like the last week of October was really good out there. So weather depending, if we get the weather, I'm going to capitalize on that. But I
Yeah.
plan on staying for 12 days or so. So that's going to be like October 25th into November, like the first week of November. So I'll hopefully get both.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. My I inversely, I hunted probably the most I've hunted this past fall, which honestly I enjoyed the heck out of it. I mean, it was really actually um a ton of fun. And I tried to I did hunt a specific deer. And obviously I didn't kill him, but I had broke my season into two sections. Pretty much that deer or bust until the end of Thanksgiving, and then a mature buck, then forward. And that's basically what happened. But there was the one of the key lessons I learned is like I picked the biggest deer to hunt, right?
Yeah,
Picked the hardest damn deer to hunt too because he didn't live there hardly at all. And um, yeah, there was just a lot of different key lessons with that. But aside from that, it's like, well, you didn't kill the deer you're after. I was in deer like nonstop. I passed a pile of really, really solid deer. Um, and so for that part, it was fun. But I feel the, I feel like the desire to try to do that. And it's hard, man, especially on a farm with like basically no improvements, and there's a lot of luck involved. Like I that's the reality of it. Like the historical data loosely matched up. It wasn't like there's some times, and I'm sure you've seen this too, like where it's like eerily
yeah,
boom, and it was like 3 days earlier here, or 3 days, and so that was something that was part of the reason I just hunted a bunch because like I have to be there to kill them, and
sure.
I still hunted super smart. There was one day that I was like I hung a set in the summer when the conditions right. I'm going to bomb back in there, and hopefully it'll come out. And so I was going to use my e-bike that day. It was November 10th of all days, one of my favorite days. Uh, Best day of the year as far as buck activity goes. I sat dark to dark, and so I get there and I pull out my bike, two flat tires, and I was like, "Oh, oh, dang, all right, well, And so it's like, okay, well, I'm still going to that spot. And meanwhile, I hung a set earlier that week, and more as an observation, like with a legitimate chance of shooting that deer. And so I'm walking back, and like I can go left and go right up to that stand, or I can go back further. And I was like, nope, I had a plan. I'm sticking my plan. And so I get back there, do a hang and hunt in the dark. No, I take that back. It was just a pain in the butt. I hung it in the summer. That is okay. This is a mistake or something I learned. When you hang stands in the summer, you're like, oh yeah, I can just meander through this branch and go there and go this. And then like in the dark with a pack for a full day's worth of stuff in the dark, I need to do a better job of just making my stands easier to get in instead of like trying to monkey around. So I felt like a hang and hunt, but it wasn't. And so I'm in there. It's like 8 o'clock. Get a cell cam notification. It's the deer I was in after, but I went and looked at the. It was 20 yards away from the other stand, and I
Oh.
was like, "Oh man, that really sucks." And meanwhile, I've seen like every single buck on the farm that day, and I really think that deer was on the 10th. Got a picture of him like 8 o'clock in the morning, going into an area where I think he likes to bed in that section on a northwest wind. And then at dark, like 10, 15 minutes after shooting light, he went to a different scrape. So like I was probably 150 yards from him. Um, Realistically, I was probably like 250 yards from him the entire day, but wasn't close enough. But and then another deer that I would say the second biggest deer. I did cheat on my plan like 2 or 3 days, and I went in there, I had phenomenal hunts past mature bucks every single time. And it's like, I wholeheartedly believe hindsight. It's so easy to say this with confidence, but it's like, if I would have went after that buck as intensely as I did the other one, I have a high conviction I probably would have killed that deer. So that's a key lesson of like targeting the deer that you realistically have a higher opportunity to hunt.
Sure.
But at
Yeah.
the inverse of it, it's like, how many opportunities or chances do you have to hunt, like a certain caliber of deer?
Mhm.
And so that was something that was pretty interesting. But then, we got nasty cold weather and for our second gun season. And there was a really nice deer. I sent you a picture of him. And I passed that deer every single night. And then I ended up shooting another mature buck that scored probably 15 to 20 inches less. And so I know people are like, oh yeah, I don't believe, I swear to God, I really did that every single evening. And I hope that deer, makes the jump. But that's the challenge of deer hunting and like trying to do the right thing. Cause like I passed some really beautiful 3 and 4 year olds that would score really nicely, but I'm trying to be the change in the world I want to see. So
Yeah.
that starts with one guy.
So that deer that you passed that you sent me pictures of, you think he was 4?
So I had to do this, and I was when we were with Leah doing the cribs. I showed him a picture. I was like, I hate to be the guy that's like, hey, look at this deer. And it's like, I don't know if this deer's 3 or 4. And he's like, I think that deer's 4. So based off of Lee's opinion, I'm going to say he's 4, but he could be 3 or 4.
Okay. So he needed to be 5.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's
know
what I was curious.
because
When you said post Thanksgiving, it was just mature bus. I was like, well,
yeah, yeah.
define mature.
So mature to me was 5+ for sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna send the teeth into the deer I shot. I don't. I had I honestly like I know saw a bunch of different deer, and it's like you can just tell from body sizes and everything else. Like he was a horse, so he's definitely wasn't 4 years old. I would eat a shoe if he was 4 years old when I sent his teeth in. Um, but overall, that was my season in a nutshell. And then that second deer, I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go hunt that deer. Last weekend, he dropped one side of his antlers already too, and I was like, all right, which is a point to bring up. With there's a lot. I have multiple deer that have dropped. I think I'm up to 5 deer that have dropped at least one side. Some of them have already dropped both sides. Um,
That's kind of crazy, right? I just listened to Don and Terry talk about that, and Don said that his number one target deer turning point dropped aside. And I mean, it's not even Christmas.
I know. Yeah,
This seems everyone says, well, yeah, it happens all the time. It happens like deer shed early all the time, but this is seems different.
I walked a farm yesterday that might be getting listed, and I was like, I got to keep my eyes open. I might find a shed antler already, because it's happening. I think more than likely, I actually reached out to some folks like, hey, because the one I passed every single night, he came out the last night with one side, and then he has both sides gone now. Uh, and I'm like, dang, is he gonna like, I got to watch him a bunch every single night, and it's like he looks healthy, he doesn't have a limp, I don't see like any weird injuries on him, and apparently they just rutted really hard, and that cold snap came with intensity because it was nasty cold.
Yeah.
It's warmer now, so hopefully the deer are getting the break that they need, but um, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I drew a late muzzleloader tag. I'm going to be going out to Iowa pretty soon. And I have cameras out there, and I'm watching like, dang, that one's already missing a side. It's like, oh man, we get into January here.
Yeah.
I'm not dragging them out by the antlers. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah.
No chance. I go bloop bloop. That happened to me last
Yeah.
year.
It's insane. I mean, think of Ohio season ends in February. Like we go into the first weekend in February. If deer are shedding in December, there's a real high likelihood that shed bucks are going to get shot earlier than ever.
Yeah, that's my public service announcement for this episode. Is it's not probably a giant doe. Look really closely to make sure it's not a shed buck, because
Yeah.
that would be that would suck for that to happen, but it will. But if anyone listens to this, bring your hawk glass and we'll look for nubs before you shoot, or look for the missing antler on its head.
Yeah. I saw a post in Ohio Whitetail Deer. This goes back to that what people's goals are. I saw a post that someone was like, basically PSA, found a shed today, and it was a fresh shed with blood on it. And you're getting the comment section, can't eat the antlers, can't eat the antlers. And there's one guy that was like, said something about how terrible would it be to shoot a Boone and Crockett caliber deer that doesn't have his antlers and you can't find his antlers.
Yeah.
Like, it's him afterwards. And you're like, I had a Boone and Crockett deer that's got 6-inch bases on its head and you can't find the antlers.
Yeah. It'll happen. It'll for sure happen. Here's what was the most exciting piece of new gear? You're the gear guy. Most exciting piece of gear you used this year? I have a couple. But what were you like, dang, this was well worth it?
The Method 3
You took
saddle
one of
from
mine.
Latitude.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm a saddle guy, always been. Always thought they were comfortable. This is a different level of comfort. Um, really, really, really enjoyed hunting out of the Method 3 this year. It was a joy. There's a couple things that like I might modify or something, but just in terms of usability and comfort, home run.
Yeah. With all of my hunting, I mean, I sat a bunch. And a lot of them were hanging hunts with the saddle. And a lot of them were, some of them were dark to dark in the same tree. Some of them were, till 1 o'clock and repositioned for the afternoon. And I spent a lot of time in the Method 3 and years previously I used the Method 2, which was the best thing I ever used. And I definitely can say it was noticeably more comfortable. And then what are the clips where you can clip your platform onto your saddle and the little cinches for the sticks.
Yeah.
Dude, I felt like a machine by the end of season. It was just like shoom, straight up.
Yeah.
And before I'd try to finagle something here, have something underneath my left arm, like just a total mess. And it's like, this is truly a rock solid approach to getting up a tree quietly and quickly. And I was pretty jacked by that. The other thing is that this will sound cheesy because I'm telling you, but the laser range finding binoculars, I knew I was going to be excited about those, but even late season gun hunting, you're like, okay, you're watching and like, it's sometimes an open field. It's like, how far are they? Sometimes they feel further than what they are. Sometimes it feels closer than what they really are. And it's just to be able to glass and like try and identify what deer's which. And meanwhile, you're like, okay, he's 215, 200, and having that all in one clean swoop, telling you, it's real nice instead of the shuffle of what you have to do otherwise.
Clint said that same thing. Believe it or not, I didn't use them this year. I never took them out in the field. They're still above me over here on the shelf. I used an 8x32 all year, just real small, and just had like my rangefinder on a tether and would stick this in my pocket. But the size of the laser rangefinding binoculars, like, just I didn't try it because they were so big. But I was the one gaming them up, like, dude, you don't have to range anymore. But yeah, I never tried them.
Well,
I never took them out.
Only hunted 4 times in Ohio, to be fair. So
That's true.
I use the heck out of them. I did have one day where, I'm wearing them out, right? I'm getting bored and just ranging random stuff. And then I can't remember what hunt it was, but it was like one that felt like a very important hunt. And my battery died in the middle of the hunt. And I was like, oh no. I was like, this is not good. I think it was opening day of gun season in Illinois. That's what it was. And I was like, click. I was like, oh crap, because like the LEDs were starting to fade, and I was like, oh no. But I mean, I had another battery at home, but I was like, oh, wouldn't that be like just some crap luck to where you don't know? But no, I really enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of what else. I will say there's cameras I put up, Moultrie cameras I put up in July that are still sending pictures right now, which is always, a very, to me, super important thing, because it's like the whole point of a cell camera is set and forget it. So that, I mean, overall, obviously a transition like of, you have one fleet to the next fleet, and overall that's been pretty darn positive. I'm trying to think here of anything else that I was really jacked about, but the whole Latitude system is, well, I really enjoyed the heck out of it. I will say, like, sitting in a tree stand is easier to do all day. But being able to be where you need to be and get into some funky trees, like it's certainly a tool in the tool belt that everyone should have wholeheartedly.
Yeah. This year I spent obviously more time hunting when it's cold, because it's been colder this year than ever. And I'd add heated socks
Oh yeah.
to that list because it was like I don't know that I'd even be able to hunt without them now. They're like so great. Like
Yeah.
it's a different level of comfort with when you don't have to worry about your feet getting cold. So that was great. I have the Numa heated vest that I think is a must have for bow hunting specifically, like trying to stay warm and not have a ton of layers. And I did a lot of experimenting this year with puffy jackets. Um, and I was always scared of like they're too noisy, they're too loud. I was always scared of that. Everyone always talks about noise, and you watch that Sitka film where they're in the bow zone and they're taping everything and making sure everything's quiet. So I was always scared to wear a puffy jacket, and I bought 2 this year. Dude, that's like a layering hack. It's like a layering it just changed a bunch of stuff on how I can wear less and get more out of it, and it's so light, like, you could pack them up into your
Yeah.
the one I could pack it into its own pocket, and
Hmm.
it's like the size of my fist, and I can stick it in my water holder if I want to. It's a Kuyu super down light
You didn't sell it.
jacket.
You didn't sell it.
No, nope, I wore it today, proudly. But those were things that I learned this year about trying to stay warm bow hunting. Um, the heated gear works, and a puffy jacket is not to be I don't think you should overlook it because of the noise.
Hmm. That's a. I I wouldn't call it a true puffy, but the Kelvin Light jacket, that's one. It's beat to heck now because I've had it forever. But that was always I always liked that piece a lot ton as well. But um, the heated vest is definitely a huge fan of one of those too. So,
Dude, they're sweet.
well, anything else here to wrap up 25?
Yeah, tradition going way back. What was your favorite piece of whitetail content that we did not produce that you consumed this year? Or
Um,
favorite piece of content? It doesn't have to be whitetail specific, just anything.
I'll stick to whitetail. I would say I was probably by the Bobby Worthington's book. I sat on my front porch and read that thing with a cup of
Nice.
coffee, and so I can't remember me doing that with many other books. So I would say that was my favorite piece of whitetail content. Um, Digitally, I feel like Derek with the thermal drone, his YouTube channel
Mm,
obviously exploded. Everyone knows that. Everyone has opinions on it, but I felt like that was also a very interesting new piece of whitetail media that you know wasn't here just a year ago. What
yep.
about yourself?
Well, it's fresh. It's top of mind. But I just finished the Whitetail Adrenaline
Oh,
DVD, the new one. Dude, I don't know how they keep having the seasons and getting the kills and the footage and having the hunts that they have. But when I got finished watching that, I almost thought like, why do I hunt if I don't hunt like them?
mm.
Like they
Will.
have some some of the most epic things ever.
And so with how they hunt, so you're saying like crawl and brawl, that style of hunting specifically?
Yeah, just traveling, like, I don't think this was in 2021, the stuff that came out, so it's 4 years ago, but, Tanner started hunting and didn't get home until Thanksgiving, like, he started in September,
That's
didn't go home until Thanksgiving.
that's crazy.
Like, can you imagine doing that for 1 year?
I would have a lot of guilt if I did that
Yeah,
because
but
it's
I couldn't
pretty
imagine
remarkable.
I mean, just killing so many deer, that's the year that he killed that gigantic mule deer, but
Hmm.
you think like, okay, it's a gigantic mule deer. That's awesome. But the way the hunt happened, like just the most epic hunts ever that they have. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Rattling that 160 in a saddle seems like the most boring thing ever compared to how they hunt. Like, I couldn't imagine experiencing that. Jared is in a state for an hour, kills like a 180 mule deer at 5 yards that he crawls up over a hill and puts one in him while he's bedded. It's like, how do these scenarios happen?
It begs the question. I mean, I think they're in the world of short form content and short attention spans. they do an exceptional job of keeping your attention on the content that they do. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're great at what they do. And they would be, do you think you could hunt from September 1, not come home all the way to Thanksgiving? Like, does that, I don't think I think most people are like, oh, I'd love to do that. But I don't think there's really that many people that would actually do it.
The reason I even get that, well, if I do it like Tanner at such a high clip, like he's being successful so quick, then maybe I could. But that trip that we took to Colorado, if I had to do that from September 1st to November, like no way.
0% chance.
Yeah, I'm not a good enough hunter to do it that long because I'm not going to be successful as quickly as he was.
Would you attribute his short success to just like ultra aggression and obviously being a skilled hunter too, like being able to read the situation?
Yeah, and he just knows how to hunt that style so well. Like he just knows where to find deer in the areas that he can stalk. That
Mhm.
he picks things off. Like in that mule deer video, like he's driving down the road and there's like one tree in the middle of a prairie, and obviously it draws your attention to it. And he's driving and he's like, he looks at Jared. He's like, "Did you see that next to that tree?" And Jared's like, "No, I didn't see it." And he backs up, and there's a 34-inch wide mule deer under this tree. Like, and you just see the tips of its tines. Like when they zoom in on it, you can't see it's there. And he
Whoa.
just picked it
Wow.
off driving down the road. It's like he just knows where to find things. And I don't think I can't imagine how many deer that I've driven by that I never saw that he'd probably be like, "Oh, there's one, let's go kill it."
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, if you didn't order it, it's the it's the best whitetail content produced.
I like it.
Ever.
WhitetailAdrenaline.com. I don't think I ordered it. I need to order it.
It's fantastic.
Awesome.
And then at the end of the video, they do like a what's to come next year. And you know how Jared's working on that crazy shooting thing? He shoots a giant whitetail at like 3 steps, walking in on it bedded. The deer stands up as it stands up, Jared pulls back while he's still walking, sticks it.
That's crazy.
It's the most amazing stuff in the world.
That is crazy. Well, no.
But that's it for me.
Well, I appreciate everyone supporting the show over since it started, but more specifically this year. Obviously, want to say thanks to Moultrie, Hawk Optics, Onyx, and Painted Arrow for supporting the show. Like that was a huge reason of how we were able to continue this, the podcast and Whitetail Cribs and everything else. And then obviously a huge thanks to you, Lucas, and Tommy for helping everything move forward. I couldn't do it without you guys. I wholeheartedly mean that. So that is it. I hope everyone has an awesome Christmas and New Year, and take a second to reflect on this past year. What do you want it to be similar to? What do you want to change about next year? So this is a time of fresh new beginnings, and I encourage everyone to take advantage of that.